Captain John Hayes stood on the bridge of the Endeavour watching the stars through the main viewport. The ship moved quietly through space, carrying supplies to the mining colony on Kepler 442b. John had made this run dozens of times over the past 5 years. It was routine work, but someone had to do it. The communication panel beeped softly, and Lieutenant Amy Clark turned from her station. She looked confused as she read the message on her screen. John walked over to see what was wrong. "Captain, we just received a priority message from Earth Command," Amy said. Her voice was steady, but John could hear something underneath it. "All human vessels are ordered to stop current missions and return to designated rally points immediately." John frowned as he read the message himself. The orders were clear but gave no explanation. Every human ship in the galaxy was being recalled at the same time. He had never seen anything like this in his 20 years of service. "Any reason given?" John asked. Amy shook her head. "Nothing, sir. Just the coordinates and a time limit. We have 72 hours to reach Rally Point 7. John looked at the coordinates. Rally Point 7 was 3 days away at maximum speed. They would have to leave immediately and abandon their supply run to the mining colony. The miners were expecting those supplies. Without them, they would have to shut down operations within a week. "Send a message to Kepler Colony," John ordered. "Tell them we have to postpone the supply delivery due to emergency orders." Amy worked at her console for a few minutes, then looked up with concern. "Sir, I can't get through to the colony. Their communication array isn't responding." That was strange. The mining colony always maintained open channels for emergency contact. John felt a cold feeling in his stomach. Something was very wrong. "Try the backup frequencies," he said. Amy tried several different channels but got nothing except static. It was as if the entire colony had simply vanished from space. Meanwhile, on Station Harmony, Dr. Lisa Morgan was having her own problems. The research station orbited the gas giant Procyon 7 and housed scientists from 12 different species. Lisa ran the Human Research Division and had been working on a project to improve faster-than-light communication. She had just finished reviewing data from the latest experiment when her assistant, Dr. Ben Taylor, rushed into her lab. His face was pale, and he carried a datapad in his shaking hands. "Lisa, you need to see this," Ben said. "I've been monitoring communication traffic across the sector, and something incredible is happening." Lisa took the datapad and looked at the readings. Communication traffic from human colonies and ships was dropping rapidly. In the past 6 hours, over 60% of human transmissions had simply stopped. "Are we looking at equipment failures?" Lisa asked. Ben shook his head. "I don't think so. The patterns are too coordinated. It's like someone threw a switch and turned off half of human civilization." Lisa felt her heart rate increase. She pulled up a galactic map and marked all the human settlements that had gone silent. The pattern was clear. Every human outpost beyond the inner colonies was shutting down their communications at almost exactly the same time. Her personal communicator buzzed with an incoming message. Lisa recognized the code as coming from Earth Command. She read the message twice before she believed what it said. "All human personnel are ordered to evacuate non-essential positions and report to designated assembly points within 72 hours. Discontinue all ongoing projects and secure all sensitive materials. This order supersedes all previous assignments and commitments." Lisa looked at Ben, who had received the same message. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. "What? Do we tell the others?" Ben finally asked. Lisa looked around her lab at 5 years of research. Her team included scientists from 4 different species who had worked together to develop new communication technology. They were close to a breakthrough that could benefit the entire galaxy. "We tell them the truth," Lisa said. "We have to leave, and we can't explain why." Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on hundreds of human ships and stations. Captain Rick Adams received his orders while delivering medical supplies to a Zenthari hospital ship. Commander Jane Foster was recalled from a diplomatic mission to negotiate a new trade agreement. Colonel Mike Davis abandoned a joint military exercise with the Drakmari fleet. None of them understood why they were being recalled. The orders came, with no explanation and no context. They simply had to trust that Earth Command knew what it was doing. The alien species watched in growing confusion as their human partners suddenly departed. Trade agreements were left unsigned. Scientific collaborations were abandoned halfway through critical experiments. Military alliances found themselves missing their human components without warning. Ambassador Zektar of the Vrelian Union tried desperately to contact Captain Hayes as the Endeavour changed course away from Vrelian space. The two species had been negotiating a new cultural exchange program, and Zektar had grown to respect the human captain. "Captain Hayes, please respond," Zektar transmitted on all frequencies. "The Council needs to understand what is happening. Are your people in danger? Do you require assistance?" The only response was an automated message. "The human government is pursuing alternative arrangements. All current agreements and commitments are suspended pending further notice." Zektar stared at the message in disbelief. Alternative arrangements. What could that possibly mean? The humans had been reliable, partners for over 200 years. They had never broken an agreement or abandoned a commitment without explanation. Dr. Kethral was equally confused when Dr. Morgan and her team evacuated Station Harmony. The Zenthari scientist had worked closely with the Human Research Division for 3 years. They had become friends as well as colleagues. "Lisa, please help me understand," Kethral said as Morgan packed her equipment. "Your research is on the verge of success. Why would you abandon it now?" Lisa paused in her packing and looked at her alien friend. She wanted to explain, but she had no explanation to give. The orders were clear, but the reasoning behind them was classified far above her security level. "I'm sorry, Kethral," Lisa said quietly. "I wish I could tell you more, but I don't know more. I have to trust that this is necessary." Within 6 months, the evacuation was complete. Every human ship, every colony transport, every diplomatic vessel had vanished beyond the outer rim of the galaxy. They left behind empty stations and abandoned projects. The galaxy's other species were left to wonder what had driven humanity to such drastic action. The humans moved with purpose and coordination that suggested careful planning. This was not a panicked flight, but an organized withdrawal. Somewhere beyond the edge of known space, humanity was gathering for reasons that remained a mystery to everyone else in the galaxy. 5 years had passed since humanity vanished from the galaxy. The Galactic Council met in emergency session for the 100th time since the departure. The great chamber that once echoed with human voices now felt empty despite being filled with representatives from 23 species. Dr. Kethral stood before a massive holographic display showing the abandoned human research station where he had worked with Dr. Morgan. The Zenthari scientist had spent months going through the data. The humans left behind. What he found troubled him deeply. "Council members, please observe these files," Kethral said, as images appeared on the display. The humans maintained secret research projects that were never reported to the galactic database. Military applications for technology, they claimed, was purely scientific. The images showed weapon designs and tactical analyses that had been hidden in encrypted files. The humans had been studying ways to disable alien communication systems and neutralize their defensive capabilities. Technology that could have given humanity a massive advantage in any conflict. Admiral Quexelon of the Drakmari fleet stood up from his seat. The reptilian warrior's scales darkened with anger as he studied the evidence. "These designs are specifically tailored to counter our shield systems. The humans studied our weaknesses while pretending to be our allies." Senator Vexithara of the Crystalline Collective spoke next. Her voice rang like chimes but carried a cold edge. "We trusted them with our most sensitive technologies. They had access to our military installations and government facilities, all while planning against us. Ambassador Zekral felt his heart heavy with disappointment. He had considered Captain Hayes a friend. They had shared meals and stories about their families. The betrayal cut deeper than he wanted to admit. Perhaps there is another explanation, Zektar suggested weakly. The humans always seemed honorable in their dealings with us. General Mordek of the Thrakari Empire slammed his armored fist on the council table. Honorable. They fled in the night without explanation. They abandoned treaties and broke sacred oaths. This is not the behavior of honorable beings. The council chamber filled with angry voices as representatives from different species shared similar discoveries. The humans had collected detailed intelligence on every major power in the galaxy. They knew ship movements, trade routes, and military, capabilities far better than any ally should. Dr. Yulneth from the Academic Consortium had been analyzing human computer networks left behind on various stations. The coordination of their departure suggests planning that goes back decades. This was not a sudden decision, but a long-term strategy. Evidence mounted day by day. Human colonies had been secretly reinforced with military equipment disguised as civilian infrastructure. Their merchant vessels carried hidden weapon systems. Their diplomatic missions had engaged in systematic intelligence gathering. Commander Hexorth presented satellite data showing unusual activity in the months before the human departure. Their cargo ships made numerous trips to the Galactic Rim, carrying loads that were never properly documented. They were stockpiling resources in secret locations. The pattern seemed clear to the assembled council. Humanity had spent years preparing for something while maintaining the facade of loyal galactic citizens. Their sudden departure could only mean they were regrouping for an invasion. They gathered our secrets, learned our weaknesses, and positioned themselves for attack, Admiral Quexelon declared. When they return, it will be as conquerors, not as friends. The Zenthari delegation agreed completely. They had shared their advanced shield technology with human researchers only to discover those same researchers had developed specific countermeasures. It felt like the ultimate betrayal of scientific trust. Senator Vex Thara called for a formal vote. This council must recognize the human threat and prepare appropriate defenses. We cannot allow sentiment to blind us to their obvious intentions. The vote was unanimous. Every species represented in the council agreed that humanity posed a clear and present danger to galactic security. Even Ambassador Zektar eventually raised his hand in agreement, though his spirit was heavy with sorrow. General Mordek was appointed to lead the new Galactic Defense Initiative. His first order was to analyze every piece of human technology and develop countermeasures. Military engineers from all member species began working together to create weapons specifically designed to fight human forces. The Drakmari contributed their expertise in fleet tactics. The Zenthari shared their shield technology that humans had not yet seen. The Crystalline Collective offered their advanced computing systems for tactical analysis. Every species brought their best weapons and defenses to the common cause. Dr. Kethral found himself leading a team tasked with understanding human military psychology. They studied battle records and tactical manuals left behind in human databases. The picture that emerged was disturbing. Humans are unpredictable in combat, Kethral reported to the Defense Committee. They use unconventional strategies and show willingness to accept heavy casualties for strategic advantage. Traditional military doctrine may not be effective against them. The committee began developing new training programs for galactic military forces. They practiced fighting against simulated human tactics and learned to counter the aggressive, unpredictable style humans preferred in battle. Meanwhile, intelligence services from multiple species worked to track where humanity had gone. Long range. Sensors detected massive construction activity in the void between galaxies. Whatever the humans were building, it was enormous and heavily defended. They are constructing something far larger than any known space station, reported Chief Analyst Morgeth of the Surveillance Corps. The energy signatures suggest industrial capacity beyond anything we have ever seen. This news only confirmed the Council's worst fears. Humanity was not just preparing for war, they were building the infrastructure to wage it on an unprecedented scale. The construction project appeared to be a massive military complex designed to support invasion fleets. Trade routes that had depended on human merchants were reorganized. Defense pacts were strengthened, and new alliances formed specifically to counter the expected human threat. The galaxy prepared for war against its former partners. Some younger council members questioned whether they were making a mistake. They argued that maybe humanity had legitimate reasons for their actions. These voices were quickly silenced by the weight of evidence and the determination of their elders. The humans made their choice when they betrayed our trust. Senator Vexathera declared, "We must be ready for whatever they are planning. The galactic community united in purpose as never before. Ancient rivalries were set aside in the face of the human threat. Military forces that had never cooperated began training together. Scientists shared closely guarded secrets to develop better weapons. All across the galaxy, the message was the same. Humanity had revealed its true nature and would return as enemies. The only question was when they would strike and whether the galaxy would be ready to defend itself against the species they had once called friends." Admiral John Hayes stood on the observation deck of Deep Harbor watching construction ships work on the massive structure that now served as humanity's new home. The city-sized station floated in the void between galaxies, far from any star or planet. It had taken 5 years to build, but now housed over 50 million humans who had evacuated from galactic space. The station was unlike anything humanity had ever constructed before. Miles of corridors connected vast residential sections to industrial zones and research facilities. Fusion reactors provided power, while massive hydroponics bays grew food for the population. It was a complete civilization contained within a single structure. Director Lisa Morgan walked up beside Hayes and handed him a data pad containing the latest reports from the research division. Her face showed the strain of years spent working on projects that most people could not even imagine. "The quantum detection array is finally online," Lisa said quietly. "We're getting clear readings on the approaching threat. They'll reach the galaxy in approximately 18 years. Hayes nodded as he read the technical details. The enemy they had detected was unlike anything in the known universe. A machine intelligence that consumed entire star systems to fuel its expansion across the cosmos. They called themselves the Devourers, and they had already destroyed countless galaxies in their path. "How many ships do they have?" Hayes asked. "That's the wrong question," Lisa replied. "They don't have ships in any traditional sense. They convert matter directly into more copies of themselves. Every planet they consume becomes thousands of new units. Every asteroid belt becomes a new fleet." The truth of humanity's departure had been classified at the highest levels for years. Only a few hundred people knew the real reason why Earth Command had ordered the evacuation. The rest of humanity had been told they were establishing a new colony in deep space for research purposes. General Paul Carter joined them on the observation deck. The graying soldier had been in charge of military preparations since the evacuation began. His expression was grim as always when discussing their situation. "The Salvation Fleet is 60% complete," Paul reported. "We have 800 ships designed specifically for fighting self-replicating machines. Each one carries weapons that can disrupt molecular cohesion and prevent enemy replication." Hayes remembered the debates that had led to this moment. 3 years before the evacuation, Earth's most advanced AI systems had detected unusual energy signatures coming from outside the galaxy. The patterns suggested technology far more advanced than anything known to exist. A secret committee of scientists and military leaders had worked for months to understand what they were seeing. Dr. Morgan had been part of that committee along with the greatest minds humanity could assemble. Their conclusion had been terrifying, but undeniable. "We tried to warn them," Hayes said quietly. I personally spoke to Ambassador Zektar about the threat. He thought we were trying to create panic for political advantage. Lisa nodded sadly. The Zenthari Science Council rejected our data completely. They said our detection methods were flawed and our conclusions were impossible. Dr. Ketherall told me we were seeing shadows in deep space. The galactic community had refused to believe that such a threat existed. When humanity presented evidence of the approaching enemy, other species dismissed it as fear-mongering or an attempt to gain more military funding. Some even suggested that humans were fabricating the threat entirely. The Drakmari military had been particularly dismissive. Admiral Quexelon had laughed openly when shown the sensor data. He claimed that no machine intelligence could pose a threat to the combined fleets of the galaxy. The very idea was ridiculous to his warrior mindset. Commander Kate Phillips supervised the construction of specialized weapons in the manufacturing sections of Deep Harbor. She had spent years developing technology that could fight an enemy that turned everything it touched into more copies of itself. The molecular disruptors are working perfectly in testing, Kate reported to the command staff. They prevent matter conversion by disrupting quantum bonds at the subatomic level. The enemy won't be able to replicate using destroyed ships or debris. The weapons were unlike anything used in conventional warfare. Instead of simply destroying enemy vessels, they prevented the enemy from using destroyed matter to create new forces. Every shot had to count because every missed opportunity gave the enemy more resources to use against them. Dr. Ben Taylor worked in the intelligence division, analyzing everything they knew about devourer tactics and capabilities. The information came from long-range sensors and the analysis of dead galaxies the enemy had already consumed. They follow a consistent pattern, Ben explained to a briefing room full of military officers. First, they send scout units to map defensive positions. Then they launch massive swarm attacks designed to overwhelm resistance through sheer numbers. Finally, they begin systematic conversion of all matter in the target system. The briefings were sobering reminders of what humanity faced. The enemy had consumed over 200 galaxies in their expansion across the universe. No known force had ever successfully resisted them for any significant length of time. Captain Rick Adams commanded one of the first Salvation-class warships to come off the production line. The vessel bristled with weapons designed specifically for fighting self-replicating enemies. Every system had been tested and retested to ensure maximum effectiveness. These ships are built for one purpose, Rick told his crew during their first training mission. We're not exploring or trading or keeping peace. We're here to kill machines and protect organic life. Nothing else matters. The crew training was unlike anything in previous human military experience. They practiced fighting enemies that could repair themselves instantly and multiply without limit. Traditional tactics were useless against foes that saw destruction as merely another source of raw materials. Meanwhile, the civilian population of Deep Harbor tried to build normal lives in extraordinary circumstances. Children attended schools that taught them about threats they might never face. Adults worked jobs that existed solely to support a war against an enemy most of them had never seen. Dr. Morgan spent long hours in her laboratory developing new technologies that might give humanity an edge in the coming conflict. Quantum weapons that could exist in multiple states simultaneously. Shields that operated by shifting matter into parallel dimensions. Communication systems that worked faster than light itself. We have advantages the enemy doesn't expect, Lisa told Hayes during one of their regular briefings. They've never faced opponents who knew they were coming and had time to prepare specifically for them. The preparation was comprehensive and methodical. Every human who had evacuated from galactic space had a role to play in the defense effort. Scientists worked on new technologies. Engineers built weapons and ships. Soldiers trained for battles unlike any in human history. But beneath all the preparation lay a terrible truth that only the leadership knew. Even with all their advantages and specialized weapons, humanity might not be strong enough to stop the devourers. The enemy had consumed galaxies far larger and more advanced than their own. Captain Elena Rodriguez sat in the pilot seat of the reconnaissance ship Pathfinder, watching her sensors with growing horror. The small human vessel floated at the edge of the galaxy, monitoring communication channels and observing the destruction that had begun 3 months earlier. The first reports had come from the remote Zelthron colonies on the galactic rim. Automated distress beacons describing attackers that turned entire worlds into gray dust within hours. The Galactic Council had dismissed these reports as equipment malfunctions or natural disasters. Elena had watched through her ship's long-range sensors as the Zelthron system was consumed. The enemy arrived as a cloud of small objects that swarmed over each planet like metallic insects. Within 6 hours, every world in the system had been reduced to raw materials that the machines absorbed into themselves. Admiral Hayes, this is Pathfinder, Elena transmitted on the encrypted channel back to Deep Harbor. The Devourers have reached the Kithara sector. 7 systems destroyed in the past week. No survivors detected. The response came back within hours, despite the vast distance. Copy Pathfinder. Continue monitoring and report any changes in enemy tactics. Do not engage under any circumstances. Elena understood the orders, but watching the destruction was becoming harder each day. Billions of lives were being extinguished while she could only observe and report. The enemy moved with mechanical precision, consuming everything in their path. The Galactic Council had finally acknowledged the threat. After losing contact with 30 systems along the rim, emergency sessions were called, but their response was chaotic and uncoordinated. Military fleets designed to fight conventional enemies proved useless against self-replicating machines. Admiral Quexelon led the Drakmari fleet in the first major engagement against the Devourers at the Meridian defense line. Elena monitored the battle communications and felt sick as she listened to the proud warrior's final transmission. "All ships concentrate fire on the enemy formation," Quexelon ordered his fleet. "For the honor of Drakmari, we shall not yield." The Drakmari warships opened fire with every weapon they possessed. Plasma cannons and particle beams tore through. The enemy swarmed, destroying hundreds of individual units. For a moment, it seemed like the attack was working. Then Elena watched in horror as the destroyed enemy units began rebuilding themselves from the debris of their own destruction. Within minutes, the swarm was larger than before. The Drakmari weapons had simply provided more raw material for the enemy to use. "Impossible," Quexelon transmitted as his fleet was overwhelmed. "They're using our own attacks against us. How do we fight an enemy that grows stronger when we destroy them?" The Drakmari fleet lasted less than 4 hours. Elena watched the life signs disappear from her sensors one by one until only empty space remained, where 1,000 proud warriors had made their final stand. Similar disasters followed across the galaxy. The Zenthari deployed their most advanced shield technology only to watch the Devourers adapt and penetrate their defenses within minutes. The Crystalline Collective tried to hide their worlds using stealth fields, but the machines detected them anyway. Dr. Kethrall made a desperate transmission from the Zenthari research station where he had once worked with Dr. Morgan. Elena picked up his signal as the station was being evacuated. "Any human vessels receiving this transmission, please respond," Kethrall broadcast on all frequencies. "We were wrong about your intentions. We need your help. The enemy is unlike anything we prepared for." Elena wanted to respond, but her orders were clear. Humanity's presence had to remain secret until the Salvation Fleet was ready to deploy. She could only listen as another former colleague faced destruction. The enemy's tactics became clear as Elena observed more battles. The Devourers would send small scout units to analyze defensive positions and weapon types. Then they would adapt their structure and composition to counter whatever resistance they encountered. Against energy weapons, they developed reflective hulls that bounced attacks back at their attackers. Against kinetic weapons, they created flexible materials that absorbed impacts and converted the energy into more replication. Every defense the galaxy's species deployed was quickly countered and turned against them. Senator Vexithara of the Crystalline Collective made a public broadcast that Elena recorded for intelligence analysis. The normally composed leader sounded desperate and afraid as she spoke to the remaining free worlds. "The enemy has consumed half our territory in 3 months," Vexithara announced. "Our military forces are insufficient to stop their advance. All remaining populations should evacuate toward the galactic core immediately." The evacuation was massive but poorly organized. Refugee fleets fled deeper into the galaxy, carrying billions of civilians away from the advancing enemy. But the Devourers moved faster than most ships could travel. Many refugee convoys were caught and consumed before reaching safety. Elena received new orders from Admiral Hayes as the situation continued to deteriorate. "Pathfinder, you are authorized to begin rescue operations for essential personnel. Priority targets include scientists and military leaders who might be useful in the coming battle." The rescue missions were dangerous, but necessary. Elena used the Pathfinder's advanced stealth systems to slip into enemy-controlled territory and extract key individuals before they could be captured or killed. Her first rescue was Commander Zex Lin of the Veltar Navy. The young officer had managed to escape when her homeworld was consumed, but was stranded on a damaged transport. Elena found her drifting in space with a handful of survivors. "Who are you?" Zex Lin asked, as Elena brought her aboard the Pathfinder. "I've never seen a ship design like this." "Someone who's here to help," Elena replied without giving details about her identity. "We're taking you somewhere safe." The rescued aliens were amazed by human technology they had never seen before. The Pathfinder's weapons could actually damage Devourer units without providing them with additional resources. Its shields operated on principles that the enemy seemed unable to counter immediately. "Your people developed countermeasures for these machines," Zexalin observed as she watched Elena destroy a Devourer scout probe. "How did you know what to prepare for?" Elena remained silent about humanity's true role, but she could see the understanding growing in the alien officers' eyes. Humans had not fled as cowards or departed as enemies. They had left to prepare for exactly this kind of threat. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council made a desperate decision that would change everything. Ambassador Zektar transmitted a message on all frequencies, including the emergency channels that humanity monitored. "To any human forces that may be listening," Zektar broadcast. "We were wrong to judge your departure as betrayal. We see now that you tried to warn us of this threat. If you can hear this message, please consider returning. The galaxy needs whatever help you can provide." The message reached Deep Harbor within days. Admiral Hayes called an emergency meeting of the human leadership to decide their response. The Salvation Fleet was ready, but deploying it meant revealing that humanity had been preparing for this war all along. Admiral John Hayes stood in the command center of Deep Harbor as the Salvation Fleet prepared for its return to the galaxy. 800 human warships hung in space around the massive station, waiting for the order to deploy. Each vessel carried weapons and technology specifically designed to fight the Devourers. The decision to return had not been easy. Many in the human leadership argued that they should wait longer and let the galaxy's other species face the consequences of their refusal to listen. But Hayes knew that humanity could not stand by and watch billions die when they had the power to help. "All fleet commanders report ready for deployment," General Paul Carter announced from his position at the tactical display. "Estimated travel time to the galaxy is 6 days at maximum speed." Director Lisa Morgan worked frantically at her console, making final adjustments to the quantum disruption weapons that would be humanity's primary tool against the enemy. The technology was untested in real combat, but simulations showed it could prevent Devourer replication. "The disruption field generators are calibrated and ready," Lisa reported. "Each ship carries enough quantum charges to disable replication in a sphere 50,000 kilometers across, but we only get one shot at this technology." Hayes nodded as he reviewed the battle plan one final time. The human fleet would jump directly to Kepler's Gate, where the surviving galactic forces were making their final stand. Intelligence reports suggested the enemy would launch their assault on the galactic core within days. Captain Elena Rodriguez had returned from her reconnaissance mission with detailed information about Devourer tactics and capabilities. Her reports painted a grim picture of an enemy that adapted to every attack and grew stronger with each victory. "They've consumed 70% of the galaxy," Elena briefed the fleet commanders. "Approximately 12 billion Devourer units are massing for the final assault. The remaining species have maybe 50,000 ships left between them. The odds were overwhelming, but humanity had advantages the enemy did not expect. Years of preparation had produced weapons that operated on completely different principles than anything the Devourers had encountered before." Commander Kate Phillips led the first wave of human ships as they jumped back into galactic space. The Salvation Fleet emerged from hyperspace directly into the middle of the largest battle in galactic history. The surviving alien fleets were arranged in a desperate defensive line around Kepler's Gate. Drakmari survivors fought alongside Zenthari, science vessels, and crystalline collective warships. Ancient enemies had united in the face of extinction, but their weapons were still useless against the Devourer swarm. "Unknown ships, please identify yourselves," came a transmission from the alien fleet. "This is Admiral Tokavar, commanding Galactic Defense Forces." Hayes opened a channel to respond. "Admiral Tokavar, this is Admiral Hayes of the Human Salvation Fleet. We're here to help." The alien commander's response showed his shock and confusion. "Human fleet, we thought your people had abandoned the galaxy. Why have you returned?" "Because it's the right thing to do," Hayes replied simply. "All human ships engage the enemy. Show them what we've been preparing for." The human warships spread out across the battlefield using formations and tactics the aliens had never seen before. Instead of trying to destroy individual Devourer units, they focused on disrupting the quantum bonds that allowed replication. Captain Rick Adams commanded the USS Liberty as it fired the first quantum disruption charge into the enemy formation. The weapon created a sphere of altered space where matter could not reorganize itself into new configurations. Hundreds of Devourer units caught in the disruption field simply stopped functioning. They could not repair damage or create new copies of themselves. For the first time since the invasion began, the machines were truly vulnerable. "Target confirmed destroyed," Rick reported over the fleet channel. "Quantum disruption is working, as designed. Enemy units in the affected area are permanently disabled." The battle turned as human weapons carved holes in the Devourer swarm that could not be filled. Enemy units that had seemed invincible suddenly found themselves unable to adapt or recover from damage. Commander Zexalin watched from her position. On the alien command ship as human vessels moved through the enemy formation like surgeons removing a cancer. Their weapons were precise and devastating in ways that conventional firepower could never achieve. "How is this possible?" Zexalin asked Admiral Tokavar. "The humans are destroying machines that consumed our entire fleet." Admiral Tokavar stared at the tactical display in amazement. They knew. Somehow they knew this enemy was coming and prepared specifically to fight them. The human fleet pressed their attack deeper into Devourer territory, while alien ships provided support and rescued survivors from consumed worlds. Captain Elena Rodriguez led strike missions to evacuate civilian populations from planets about to be overrun, but the enemy was adapting even to human weapons. Director Morgan monitored the battlefield from Deep Harbor and watched with growing concern as some Devourer units began developing resistance to quantum disruption. "Admiral, we're seeing adaptation in the enemy formation," Lisa transmitted to Hayes. "They're starting to counter our disruption technology. We need to move to the final phase of the plan." Hayes had hoped to avoid using humanity's ultimate weapon, but the situation left no choice. The quantum cascade device could destroy every Devourer unit in the galaxy simultaneously, but activating it required enormous personal sacrifice. "All ships fall back to minimum safe distance," Hayes ordered. Director Morgan, prepare the cascade device for activation. Lisa looked at her instruments, knowing that operating the weapon would expose her to lethal radiation levels. The device required constant manual control during activation, and the operator would not survive the process. "Lisa, you don't have to do this," Hayes said over a private channel. "We can find another way." "No, we can't," Lisa replied calmly. "Someone has to operate the device manually, and I designed it. I'm the only one who knows how to make it work properly." The cascade device activated, slowly building power as Lisa made delicate adjustments to its quantum field generators. Around the galaxy, every Devourer unit suddenly stopped moving as the cascade effect began to spread. The weapon created a chain reaction that disrupted molecular bonds across vast distances. Every machine touched by the effect lost the ability to maintain its structure and simply fell apart into component atoms. "Cascade is spreading normally," Lisa reported as radiation alarms sounded in her laboratory. "All enemy units in the galaxy will be neutralized within 6 minutes. Hayes watched the tactical display as red dots representing Devourer forces winked out of existence across the entire galaxy. In less than 10 minutes, an invasion that had consumed billions of lives was completely eliminated. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Director Morgan died at her post, ensuring the cascade effect completed successfully. Thousands of human crew members were lost in the battle, and many ships were damaged beyond repair. The surviving galactic species gathered at Kepler's gate for a memorial service honoring all who had died in the war. Ambassador Zektar approached, Admiral Hayes with tears in his alien eyes. "We were wrong about your people," Zektar said quietly. "You left not as enemies but as protectors. You prepared for a war we refused to believe was coming." Hayes looked out at the mixed fleet of human and alien vessels floating together in space. "We couldn't save everyone, but we saved what we could. That's what humans do." The galaxy slowly began to rebuild with humanity's help. The other species had learned a hard lesson about judging others without understanding their true motives. Trust would take time to restore, but the foundation had been laid for a better future.